Hey, Teddy, let's get right into it. This weekend, there's something that we should know about called the Final Four and the championship game on Monday. But before we get into that, Teddy, we got to talk a little bit of NBA action. Yesterday on the show, opening up line on New Jersey, plus 2.5 for the Philadelphia 76ers, rose to as high as 5.5, closing at 4.5. If you had that Sixers ticket, if you had that money line ticket, spread ticket, you were in good shape, Teddy. But poof, right up in smoke down the stretch.
Sure. I mean, Philly had a 5-point lead with under 3 to play, but they couldn't get stops down the stretch. George Hill went nuts for Milwaukee. And, of course, the only reason George Hill is in the game at that point is because Eric Bledsoe got tossed early. So Hill forced to play extended minutes, but a deep team like Milwaukee, no problem when your starting point guard gets tossed a couple minutes into the ballgame. Hill makes the shots. The Bucks do it without Bledsoe. No Jimmy Butler for Philly. I'm telling you, he matters a lot. Embiid's the guy who's moving the lines the most for the 76ers right now. I'm going to put Jimmy Butler as co-MVP with Embiid on Philadelphia. When he's not in the game, the Sixers feel it, and they certainly felt it down the stretch last night when they could not get stops against Milwaukee, turning a winning ticket into a loser in the closing minutes.
Teddy, taking a look at the Sixers, I mean, Ben Simmons didn't have that great a game. Joel Embiid was fantastic, but obviously the Greek Freak is just, in line, headed, ready to take down an MVP possibly. If we take a look at the Sixers this year, Teddy, kind of coming down the stretch, 3 straight losses, 5 out of 7, as it says down there on the ticker, and the Bucks also clinched the top seed overall in the NBA, which means they had the most wins. Last year, Teddy, a little bit different dichotomy. The Sixers coming in red hot into the playoffs, winning double-digit games in a row, go in. Now they actually end up losing to the Boston Celtics, but this year, a little bit different feel, taking the more rested approach, and don't worry about it. We'll be fine in the playoffs. Could this be a detriment for him this year?
Honestly, the last 10 games of the NBA regular season have, when you do a correlation study, zero impact on what happens in the playoffs. Some teams rest, some teams go balls to the wall, some teams are fighting for playoff positioning, some teams aren't. It really, if you're trying to correlate, hey, Philly's struggling right now. They lost 5 out of 7, therefore they're in trouble in the postseason. I think the Sixers will be fine in terms of getting out of the first round. After that, it's going to be a battle in the East. But I don't see any of the lower seeds in the Eastern Conference winning a playoff series, even with Philly struggles. They're going to get out of the first round.
Teddy, common theme in some of these extracurricular games, as we like to say, or postseason games on the lower level, not talking about March Madness with the NCAA main tournament, but we're taking a look at the CIT. Another high-level total. We've seen a few of these, Teddy, marked, 165 and north of that, go up in flames. They had a pretty good pace to this game, but when you're talking about, betting regular season, betting postseason, normally if I told you, hey, Teddy, congratulations, 90-70, you hit the total. Didn't even come close in this one.
Well, we talked right here on that betting show yesterday, Donnie, about the fact that for these high totals to get up and over, you need both teams to play with pace and both teams to get their fair share of makes. What happened last night? Well, one of the two teams played with pace and got their fair share of makes. That, of course, the Thundering Herd. The other team, Green Bay, well, second half, only 28 points. In fact, they outscored by 22 after the break. The pace was there for Green Bay, but the makes were not. Hence, this game staying under the total.
Certainly running out of gas there. The road team actually had the lead at the break, Teddy, but faded down the stretch. I believe it was a 50-point second half that, Wisconsin Green Bay ran into against Marshall. So that series is over. We have another series tonight that we're going to preview in just a little bit before we get to the Final Four as well. Noah Syndergaard, Teddy, you've heard this guy. I mean, look, fantastic pitcher, unbelievable, takes the mound, running his mouth a little bit more than throwing pitches so far early in the season. We saw how upset he was at the Mets leaving and going to Syracuse and then flying in for opening day. But now Syndergaard flies ahead of the New York Mets. They get out late in Miami last night, early day action, blaming that on why the bats were slow. Syndergaard did his part yesterday. 6 innings, 1 earned run at that point. Weren't able to overcome a 4-0 lead with the Nationals. But Syndergaard running that mouth early, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. Flat out, he's right. A night game, then travel, then a day game? NBA players wouldn't stand for that shit. No way, But in MLB, yeah, guys, deal with it. The Mets looked real sleepy on offense yesterday, as they should have, playing a night game with a flight, getting home at 2 a.m. And oh, by the way, now you got to be back at the stadium in a couple hours. They look sleepy. It was a bad scheduling spot. Syndergaard had every right to complain about it. He had every right to complain about the trip to Syracuse. Not what big league teams are supposed to be doing to keep their players rested and fresh for a long MLB season. Usually, you know me, I got no sympathy for these guys. But in this case, Syndergaard's right. And the fact that he's talking about it and getting heat for it, no, the guy's right. He's allowed to say his piece.
Yeah, exactly. Especially to start the season, Teddy. It wasn't like Major League Baseball did this to him. That was self-inflicted Mets wounds to say, hey, it's 75 degrees down here in like Sarasota, Florida. Why don't we go up to Syracuse in the cold and go in a dome that's built for basketball and football, and we'll have a nice workout before then we fly in the opening day. Certainly does have a point of view on that one.